Hello, everybody. Sounds like we're on air for Alfresco Community Office Hours for November 2014, and today it is our pleasure to have the product management team with us. I invited Thomas, and he got a good chunk of the team to come. There were a couple that couldn't make it, but I have to thank especially Thomas and Peter to be online very early in the morning, and Jens to be online in the evening. So John and Mark are kind of in between, but thank you for coming outside of normal work hours.
No problem.
So a couple announcements. First thing is Enterprise Edition 5.0 is getting really close. We're really excited. The engineering team has been hard at work, and we've started a lot of our planning for what's coming after 5.0. So that's been fun. Shortly after the Alfresco 1 Enterprise release, we should have the release of Community Edition. Sorry, I'm gonna mute Gab. The audio's a little funny for a moment. So after Enterprise Edition release, we should have Community Edition release shortly after. And next event will be Tech Talk Live in early December. NASA's Christopher Delp is going to come from NASA, and his summit talk was crazy, very interesting. They use Alfresco as a modeling tool for their engineering projects. So it'll be an interesting way to look at how the repository gets used. And last announcement is actually a question. I've been considering doing office hours in December, but I don't have any guests scheduled. So if you're interested in joining me for a conversation, let me know. Otherwise, we'll just skip it and enjoy the holidays. But I think I can make time for office hours the week of the 15th or whenever that is. So let me know if you're interested. That is the announcements list. So let's introduce the panel. Thomas, would you like to introduce yourself and your team?
Sure. I think I met some of you folks. Maybe you've seen some of the announcements we made at Summit. I'm Thomas DeMeo. I'm the VP of Product Management. Been about 8 months I've been here. I'm very excited. This is my first hangout with this group, so this is nice. And because it takes a village to get Alfresco together, and that means the community and also a whole host of people internally, I wanted to have some of the product management team join me as well. So I'm going to I don't know what order across the row at the bottom it has people, but maybe I'll hand it off to Peter Monks is the first person on the team. A lot of you folks may know Peter as a long-time Alfrescan, and you can see his beautiful photo this morning. It's early in San Francisco, so he didn't have a chance to get ready in time. But Peter, want to say hello?
Yeah, hi everyone.
Peter, unshaven with bedhead.
Exactly. Believe me, that picture's a lot better than the reality. But yeah, I think many of you have probably met me at one or other of the summits or the DevCons before that. I'm a product manager looking at some of the product lifecycle related features, so the customer's lifecycle with the product. And I'm actually really happy that to be on Thomas's team and to be working with the other guys you see on the bottom of the screen.
All right, next person we have up is Marc de Bresson. Marc's in the Maidenhead office. He has been leading the mobile applications for quite some time. Marc, want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely, yes. So I've been with Alfresco for about 3 years now, and it's been a fantastic ride on mobile applications, mobile SDK, and the open source nature of our mobile work. So I'm very excited to be here and answer any questions on mobiles there may be.
Great. And John Eyeball is next in line, at least the way I'm looking at the screen. John's also been around for Alfresco for a while, looking at a lot of core Alfresco 1. Maybe, John, you can introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure, John Eyeball. I've been with Alfresco actually not that long, 15 months coming up. And I've been working alongside Mark Feynman on Alfresco 1, looking at the roadmap for the past year or so, and more recently working on the reporting analytics module, as well as managing some of the third-party integrations.
Yeah. And next in line, at least on my screen, we have Jens Dahl. Jens came from the WeWebU acquisition looking at Workdesk and has been looking at a lot of different ways to integrate case management into core Alfresco 1. So Jens, maybe you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, Thomas, you said everything I wanted to say. Probably some of you know me from former WeWebU times, before the acquisition. Now the Workdesk product, and I'm dedicated to make this work on basis of the Alfresco platform and share during the next months. So, happy to meet some of you soon.
And then also in the panel, and this is a little bit, this might be news for some of the folks in the community. I after joining Alfresco and working on a lot of the near-term projects to help get 5.0 out the door, started working with Gab early in the cycle between support and product, and I was so impressed with Gab, I stole him from the product group, and I'm happy to announce that now Gab is part of the product management team, looking at a lot of the core platform functionality and how we can make not only the core platform more robust and scalable, but also make it easier from developers and extensions and things like that. So, Gab, I'll let you elaborate a little bit more on that.
Thanks for the introduction, Thomas. And yeah, I'm really excited to have joined the product management team. As Thomas was saying, I will look after the core platform and the APIs. And you know, I hope to bring a lot of the community and customer success experience that I had in Alfresco to sort of, you know, strengthen the product and make it more viable for all of you out there. So I'm really excited about that. Thanks for the introduction, Thomas.
Yeah, no problem. All right, Richard, that's the team. At least some of the team we have today. There's other folks that we don't have, but that's a good cross section.
Excellent, and Gab's new role is going to be really important for a lot of people attending because we got a lot of developers. So, right. And Gab's going to be managing a lot of that developer experience too, huh?
Yep, exactly, and that's, you know, the developers and developer ecosystem and platform stability, modularity, and APIs, and all that expertise that Gab brings is important. And one of the things that I want to progress is to, you know, staff up the team, and I think, you know, Gab's just one example of that.
Excellent, and it looks like, Gab, on IRC you're getting a bunch of pats on the back, so congratulations.
Hey, look at that. Yeah.
We kind of mentioned this summit, but I don't think a lot of people attending realize. So formally, I'm moving to Thomas's team as well to look after community editions. So.
And actually, let me elaborate more on that. Another thing I wanted to do, and because, you know, community is important, the community product is important, and I think because of that, having a dedicated product management lead in my team that reports to me is important. To treat it as a real product, to make sure that it's aligned with the rest of the roadmap. We are doing the right thing by the community. It's you know, a first-class citizen, so to speak. So. Another tangible thing I wanted to put out to the community is, and I know, Richard, you may have mentioned this before, but also stealing Richard from the marketing group and pulling him to the product team also, because I believe that we can, if we take community, have it be you know, part of that main planning as we do for the repo and for the extensions, and look at how to best take and interact with some of the key community members to take their efforts and maybe add more momentum and weight behind them. I think that's something we can do as well also, and I've really enjoyed working with Richard and the passion and the focus that he's had, but having that be part of the product team, I think would be great. So I've also stole Richard, so yeah, that also helps.
But no worries, my current responsibilities are going to be managed. We're still working on that whole transition plan, so
yeah, exactly. And Gab is doing double duty right now too. So although I've wanted to set a bigger direction of beefing up the product management team and also making some new hires, and I'll talk to some of that later on. You know, folks like Richard and Gab are doing the double duty, so you have to cut us some slack. As at least we get 5.0 out the door and get this transition behind our belt.
And Thomas, I wanted you to spend a minute and talk about how design fits into your team. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so one of the things that I've found, and I've been doing product for a long time, is when you have good and close alignment between product management and also user experience design, you're able to really understand the customer problem better. And what I'd like to get to, and I announced internally in an all Alfresco email a couple weeks back, and this will be news to the community, is I'm really moving towards what I'll call a three-in-the-box model, between having product management, user experience design, and also architects, you know, three in a box, you know, all together, to be able to go after and really understand a customer problem. So, for example, if it's around collaboration or case management, or maybe some specifics that we want to get into related to records management, having a product lead that really becomes the business advocate, the domain expert, having a design lead that really is the customer advocate, the experience advocate, the person that really understands from an interaction standpoint how this is going to hang together, And then the third component, having that be having an architect be part of that squad or that group to be able to say, from a viability standpoint, is this something that we can do? Is this relatively easy to go after and embrace, or is this something more difficult? How might we address this specific problem in a way that could be leveraged by others, which could turn into an API? But having design be as part of that conversation, and also technology be part, the architects be part of that conversation, is able to focus on the customer problem, iterate faster to make sure we're able to refine and get it right, and I think ultimately deliver a better experience. So having product design be part of my group, which is really part of what I've been talking about with Doug when I took the job, I really wanted to make sure we had that alignment, because design is something you don't have at the end of the process. Design is something you have at the very, very beginning of the process. So right from the get-go, based on the customer needs, you're able to do the right thing. So design is very important. I've had it roll under me in past organizations. I think you get a lot more traction, and I'm happy to be able to bring that to Alfresco.
Excellent. Thanks for. I'm really excited. It's been fun to work with Linton, and I hope we have his team on to discuss our design philosophy in a bit more detail. One of the things we've been asked to do is to better define design expectations that people can use to integrate with Alfresco. So that's something we need to discuss more and work on.
Yeah, and since a lot of since people do extend Alfresco, we do want to have a rising tide of experience will help us all. So the way that we can make not only our code available like we do, but also design best practices, UX toolkits, things like that, that also may make it easier for the community to do extensions and to be able to have the entire developer ecosystem offer a more cohesive experience. Hey, that just helps all of us. So to the degree that we can do that, that would be an interesting investment also. And that doesn't happen overnight. So don't expect me to release something tomorrow, but it certainly directionally is something that I think would help us all.
Excellent. So thank you for the introduction to the team, and welcome everybody to Office Hours. And I've been asked to make sure I talk less because the community gets to hear from me a lot, and let you guys talk more. So let's start. We got a lot of submitted questions, and we're going to start going through the list. We discussed them a little bit as a team, and we're excited to share the feedback on what we're able to research. I'm also watching IRC. I've seen one question come in that we can discuss in more detail. So let's start with roadmap. One of the responses I got was that Summit this year was great. We talked about lots of far in the future roadmap, but people are interested. What's coming after 5.0? What's the short-term roadmap?
Yeah. So we started thinking about post 5.0 back in the June-July timeframe, and a lot of what we've been looking at is there's certainly some things we want to make investments at the platform level. Specifically, property groups is something we've been thinking a lot about. It's been on the list. John Eyeball and Mike Farman have been thinking a lot about property groups in the past and how really people can build more advanced workflows on that. And because that also affects, for example, what Jens is working on related to how do we incorporate that work desk functionality into the main part of the platform. So a thing like property groups is a big area of investment and an investigation right now. We're a lean and agile shop internally. So I can talk about themes and directions. I can't talk about exact dates because a lot of this stuff, especially moving to a three-in-the-box mentality, means we're going to iterate on this and get some really comps around. But that's one of the example of a usual suspect. There's a lot of platform improvements related to encryption. There's things we can do around hybrid syncing that we'd like to do a better job. We'd like to do a better job in some of the authentication around XAML. Peter's been looking at as part of his lifecycle responsibilities. How do we make it easier to deploy? How do we make it easier to upgrade? All the patching workflows I think are important also as people have big deployments and want to be able to see that, be able to take and apply patches. So a lot of what I'll call maybe a theme around scalability is important. I think flexibility of workflows, and I'll use property groups as a key example of that, is important. We've done a great job in 5.0 of building that robust API set for mobile. And we obviously have our mobile apps out now, but we continue to get feedback on what we would want to do next on things like that as well. So those are some kind of higher level themes of things that we'd like to go after. One of the product management organizational things I've been looking at also is, we had a really kind of a unified Alfresco 1 team that was responsible for not only the core platform but also the application share, which many of you know and extend. But what I wanted to do is provide better separation of the core platform, the core repository, and also build out and make that API layer more robust, so that not only could we make share extensions easier and iterate faster on share, but also we could think about other example applications, exemplary applications that we could put on top of that. So I think you'll also see a separation of that core platform repository from the application layer. And I think that's one of the things that Gab's going to be looking at a lot as he joins the group, is how do we provide that. And then as the needs of the customer and we're able to build up and get more velocity from a design standpoint and from a three-in-the-box iteration standpoint, I'd like to be able to iterate faster on the application layer to address broader use cases, usability, maybe some different extensions, but do that at the app level at a faster cadence than at the platform level. So what that means is faster app releases, additional apps, harder APIs, better ways to test your APIs, things like that. But this is the kind of cadence I want to get into. So some of the post 5.0 themes is that separation. That's a long answer for that.
It's good information though, and
yeah.
Before we go to questions, just so everybody in the audience knows, Mark and Peter both have to leave a little bit early. So if you have questions about mobile or about installation, deployment models, out-of-the-box experience, then please raise those now. So
actually, and you can interrupt me anytime to do that, as these guys have to go, so that's fine.
Excellent. So Jinja Ninja points out that our roadmap mostly expires at 5.0 in the wiki.
Right.
And he's wondering when we're going to get around to updating that.
The ambiguous answer is soon, and it's funny because Rich and I were talking about this the other day, and a lot of this gets to these major themes I just discussed. And I was actually looking at that as well, saying, hey, we talked about 5.0, but nothing beyond 5.0. So that is on my radar already. What I don't want to have happen is us go dark on you folks and have no understanding of what's happening next. I don't think that's acceptable. So look for that to come soon. I'd like to get it done before the end of this calendar year, just so that we get it out before some people disappear for the holidays. But everybody's really in heads down mode right now, getting 5.0 out, and also that means locking in what 5.0 next, I'll call it, themes are. So I hear you. We won't go dark on you, but that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah, one of the challenges with the wiki is it's not a great tool for communicating our roadmap as it changes. So right. Peter and Austin specifically have been evaluating new tools that will help us give more visibility into that.
Yeah, the wiki is certainly it's a little. I mean, it's good from directional, but it is kind of kludgy. So I agree, and I think we need to have better ways to communicate that.
So Jinja Ninja says, everything Thomas is doing is what we want. Give him a Santa hat because it's Christmas time. So
I want a Santa hat.
Ol asks, actually this is a couple questions between Peter and Ol, is we announced a lot of new features, but then nobody knows whether they're going to be enterprise or community. Can we do a better job at explaining that difference? I think part of the problem is we haven't always decided when we announce.
Yeah, so I think it's a fair ask, so I hear you on that one. And a lot of the things that you saw, and maybe we talked about when we saw each other last in London, yeah, some of those things like analytics is enterprise, some of that Outlook integration, things like that, enterprise. However, some things that we have talked about that is relevant to community is that Alfresco Office integration. So having what we call AOS, Alfresco Office Services, which is really what mimics that SharePoint repository, which enables the Microsoft Office apps to be able to think Alfresco is a repo. That we're really looking at that as the new way in which we integrate, and that's something that would be community. So we do have some good announcements related to that as well. But yeah, I think it's a fair ask to say, hey, give us better guidance on what is enterprise and community. I hear you on that one.
And that was the next question from Ol was, what's the plan for the upgraded Alfresco office services? So very exciting.
I read your mind. Because, yeah, I think that's a good example of how we want to get it out there.
I was just reviewing the chat. So I think that's it for roadmap. Let's spend a minute on developer experience. We got this really nice piece of feedback when we asked for questions. I forgot who said it, but they said, hey, even though the API surface keeps growing and the extension surface keeps expanding, it's still understandable, and that's very impressive. So we appreciate that pat on our back. I got to relay it when it's such positive feedback. One of the questions was, there are a lot of times in Alfresco when people are extending the system that they run up against private variables, or so you can't bring those variables into your extension. Can we make more of those protected so that the developer experience is more flexible?
I think that's that's a fair ask, and that's some of the things Gab would look at and Peter would look at is look at this core platform and how to make it robust. So that's good input. I don't know if anything you want to elaborate on, Gab or Peter.
Yeah, I'm happy to add something there, and maybe Peter, feel free to jump in. I'm sure you have, we'll work a lot on that together. But I think that looking specifically at the Java extension model, and I think that we have to look, to a more aligned extension model, both on the Java level and REST API layer, in terms of life cycle, in terms of what are the different use cases that you guys need to do. I think that relying only on the sort of Java layer, it's a bit risky. So I think, I won't commit to, make all the variables protected, but it's certainly something that we need to look at. I don't know, Peter, if you want to add something there.
I guess I would just say it sounds like this is a very specific request. It sounds like whoever asked the question, I'm sorry I missed who it was, has something specific in mind. So the best way to get those kinds of requests handled quickly is to raise a JIRA, and then if you have Gab and or my contact info, email or Skype or Twitter or anything, the IRC channel is a good channel too, then just ping us with that ticket number and we can take a look. I think the problem is when we hear, oh, let's make public protected, public and private protected, that applies to more than 100,000 elements in Alfresco. So for us, it's like a needle in a haystack to know exactly what you mean. So having a bit of specificity about the request would be awesome.
Excellent. So if you have any follow-up questions, let us know in IRC. Mark just joined, and he's wondering if he missed the questions about the partner model. I wanted to make sure there were a handful of questions about the partner model that I thought about addressing, but when we got the team together, we decided we need to have a separate session just about the partner model. So we'll postpone those for another day. So sorry, Mark, but we'll cover those in the future. I don't know, February maybe, because January course is engineering. Let's talk about security though. Well, actually, I'm doing a time check. Yeah, we should have time. So let's talk about security. One of the questions we got was, we recently did Security Advisory 7. As our normal security policy, we only updated the latest version of Community Edition. And of course, that puts people on older versions of Community Edition in a bind. They have to figure out how to mitigate the vulnerability themselves or and so any thoughts on how we can make that easier for the community, or why we do it the way we do it?
Yeah, a couple things. Back to the how we could make it easier. I think we're looking at better ways to document, or at least call out what areas the problems were, to find it, so that the community would be able to identify that and do the integration that they need. It is a challenge, quite honestly, to have to be able to support and do everything we do and apply our resources to the enterprise, which is, what helps us all be successful to keep the lights on and make the contributions we do. But it is a challenge to be able to support enterprise and obviously make sure that's as robust and secure as possible. And then there's so many times we can go back related to the community side. So I know it's not complete parity, I understand that, but also from us, where we're able to spend our resources and time, we just haven't been able to, keep community as easy. So I think because we're not able to meet that need as you really need, from us directly, sure, we can document it better and make it easier for you guys to patch it. But I'm not, just because there's so many hours in the day and other things we need to get to, going back and doing a bunch of patches for older communities is not really something that we can. I don't think we're best suited for, honestly. I think the newer features that we're focused on and the themes for post 5.0 is really where more of our value add is. So, but yeah, documenting where the problems lie, that's a fair ask.
Yeah, and to be clear, we do take it on a case-by-case basis. There have been examples where something really big happens and upgrading doesn't make sense, and we figure that out. But as a general basis, if you want long-term support, that's what Enterprise Edition is for.
That's right. Yeah, and like you said, I think case-by-case is important, so I don't want to, there's no really hard and fast rules. We're going to try to do what's right, but also we believe what's right is to keep the train moving forward and making sure we're investing in the future as well.
Excellent. So, changing topics, Mark, did you have any updates on mobile you wanted to give before you have to leave?
Well, we're very happy with the latest release on iOS 2.0, and we're hard at work on some very interesting Android features in terms of configuration, basically allowing you to configure your application with no code. Obviously, you have the option of using an open source app and modifying it, and it's something that we're seeing some uptake in. I just got some information from our sales guy, but one of our large customers building applications on top of our SDK, and so we're very excited about the slow but ongoing uptake of those tools, and we're carrying on development of those. The team is also hard at work on other products, other clients for Alfresco, so busy. That's pretty much what's going on at the moment.
Excellent. One question for you is, how do you figure out which releases of mobile are compatible with which releases of Alfresco, and is that well documented?
Yes, actually, we've been working really hard to keep backward compatibility up to Alfresco 3.4, and we're just sticking with that as much as we can. So there should be no questions in terms of what works. Obviously, some features, for example, if you look at My Files or Shared Files, are only available in some of the Alfresco newer releases, and so they will only work with those backends. But otherwise, we try to keep the clients working as far back as possible.
Excellent. And next question is, if the latest release of the mobile uses the seamless atom binding, and we'd like to make that more configurable. We recently had a project being broken because of the update.
I'm not sure what it is, but I'd be interested to hear about anything that breaks. So people are absolutely welcome to email me directly, mark.dubresson@alfresco.com, and I will look into it.
And I have to say that Mark, as well as Mike and Jean-Marie and most of the mobile team, hang out in the mobile section of the forums. So that's a good way to get a lot of feedback. They love feedback on how the mobile client works and how the SDK works and all that. So, and they want to know your use cases. So if you're using it, let them know.
Yes, please.
Excellent. So let's change topics now. Move to Peter before he has to go. We had a couple questions on the installer. I think one of the questions is, what's your plans for the future of the installer, Peter? Is it supposed to be the way to go? We didn't get rid of it in 5.0. In 5.0 we still have WAR installs. But we've also got the new Maven experience, and we've upgraded the way the installer does a lot of checks. What's your vision for where that should go?
Yeah, and I think probably the place to start is to point out that there are actually a couple of different audiences here, and they have quite different installation requirements. So you mentioned Maven, which is obviously a developer-centric, in inverted commas, I'm doing air quotes here, you can't see it on my picture, but the developer installation experience in particular is markedly different to that of test and production environments. Generally, test and production environments are installed on much different hardware in much different environments, often different security, different operating systems even. And of course, one of the biggest differences is that for a production install, and we're seeing an increasing amount of this as we ourselves componentize Alfresco and do some of the separation that Thomas and I think Gab mentioned earlier. And that is that Alfresco is increasingly becoming a series of semi-independent components, the transformation server, the solar components, the solar indexer and the solar searches. That will likely continue. I think that there's generally a sense that that's the way to go. And that makes one-time kind of single artifact, single asset installers of any kind, whether it's a WAR file, an IR file, or a binary installer that lays out bits, increasingly problematic. And that's because it falls on the administrator to know what to put where and then to wire everything up manually, and that's a very time-consuming and error-prone process. So the reason I say that, and the reason that's all sort of context, it's background that's bubbling away, and our customers have commented on this. My personal opinion at this point, and it's an untested opinion, we're in the process of validating this now, is that the current approaches that we take to installation for production and QA, I'm not talking about development here at all, but for production and QA, none of the approaches we use today are appropriate any longer in this modern world of kind of microservices and multiple distributed components. And of course, with things like Docker and obviously virtual machines have been around for a while, but AWS and so on and so forth, there's a lot more sophisticated work we can do. Some of you may have seen at Summit, Steve Rigby and I think it was Alex Prescott in the US gave a talk on the Enterprise Deployment Portal. That's a tool that they've developed internally for deploying Alfresco, effectively what I would call an Alfresco instance, which is really clusters of repository nodes, clusters of share nodes, database servers, content store servers, transformation servers, ... and make it very easy to basically pick a menu and say, I want a cluster with 7 nodes, I want 4 share nodes on separate servers, I want a transformation server on a different box, I want to put Oracle in a rack configuration over here. Basically go through the menu and pick what you want, and then what the deployment portal does is spin up the entire environment by programmatically constructing virtual machines. My personal, as I say, untested at this point, but my personal opinion, the theory we're testing right now is that that is actually the way of the future, that is more likely to be the way that customers will deploy or wish to deploy production and QA environments. And so that's what we're evaluating. That's a big change though, and that's why it doesn't show up at all in 5.0, is at 5.0 we only had about 2 months to tweak the installer. So the installer is pretty much the same installer we've always had with all of the warts and whistles that it's got. It has some minor improvements. It does a bit more validation. We've incorporated some feedback from customer success, common installation pitfalls that installer can help customers to avoid. WAR and IR remain available for those of you who love doing everything yourselves. That also supports the developer use case, of course, the Maven experience. But in a nutshell, 5.0 is really just an incremental polishing of what we had, but for the future we're looking at really this modern world of, really basically spinning up virtual environments and doing it from some kind of, choose your own adventure type of configuration or installation console.
Excellent. I think it is, if you haven't watched Gab and Mao's talk on the Alfresco Boxes project last summit, you should watch it, because I think Peter was pointing out that that's really the long-term future for how you're going to deploy software. I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah, and just to be clear, it's interesting because Mao has actually, and I don't know if I should be announcing this, Thomas start doing furious chopping motions if I'm getting this wrong, but Mao has actually joined Alex Prescott's team in Alfresco to combine forces. So the deployment portal and the Alfresco Boxes projects are approaching the same problem from different directions, and there's value. Certainly I encourage those two guys to get together more, but there's I see a lot of value in the two of them coming together and pooling their ideas. Boxes is more developer focused right now, but VM agnostic, whereas the deployment portal is production and QA focused, but is very AWS specific. And so there's sort of some limitations and pros and cons of each. if we can somehow come up and kind of mash that all up together, I think we'll have a great story.
I want to just add something here, Peter, because you nailed it, and I'm super happy, actually. And I think it's official news now that Maurizio joined DevOps, so I think no problem sharing that. But I have had some feedback from partners and community members that, yes, they loved at Summit the focus on deployment and on arbitrarily complex modern deployment technologies. But yes, so I think that there was a feeling of multiple solutions that were presented and proposed. So I really welcome the fact that people are joining forces internally at Alfresco. I think we can expect a much more aligned strategy there. So that's, I think, great news for everyone.
Excellent.
And Peter, let me jump on that one too, because deployment, installation is really just one piece of the overall life cycle that I wanted to start looking at more. And that's right, that's what Peter's been jumping into. There's also another effort that we've been, because we have customer councils with our enterprise customers, where we bring in, a dozen leading architect and senior leaders at large enterprise deployments, and they talk about some of their problems. And we do these, quite frequently between myself and Andrea Lagan, who runs customer success. We look at how can we make it easier to not only deploy but also maintain, patch, upgrade, everything that we need to be, extend, everything that we need to do for some of the enterprise customers, which really it helps everybody. But another thing, Peter, before you drop off, I think some of the defect remediation, patching, the ability to look, we're looking at what are some of the key problems and how might we make that better in the future. That's another thing that we're doing operationally internally. That isn't necessarily new features, but it's how it makes it, I think, a heck of a lot easier to just run an Alfresco environment.
So Darkstar, that was a very long answer to your question. I hope you appreciate it, because that was a lot of good information there. So let's change topics. There are two questions in IRC that we want to cover quickly, and then we still want to talk about iCal. We haven't even gotten to that list of questions. So
okay.
First question is, this might be a better question for the engineering team, so feel free to punt till January. But do we have any plans to support Git and GitHub better? Because currently it's hard for the community to contribute back to SVN.
I've heard that more than once. I don't know if I want to say anything from my standpoint. I mean, I've heard it more than once. Let's just put it that way. Gavin and Peter, I don't know if you want to comment on that one as well.
Well, actually, if I could jump in, I guess Mark's already dropped, but I think some of the mobile development done out of GitHub, and I know some of the other kind of add-on peripheral work has been done in GitHub. Gab, do you remember exactly what it is? We've got a private organization that we use on GitHub, so there is some work going on in GitHub, I know.
Yeah, I think some of the collateral projects are out there. I don't remember exactly the details. Certainly, I think we don't have our core Alfresco 1 platform on GitHub. It's just mirrored. I think that's what the question is about. And I don't know, maybe this is more of a question for Richard.
Yeah, I think the best answer to that question is to watch Sam Wells' lightning talk on London Lightning Talk Session 3, I think, where he talks about the challenges of building for Alfresco. And he talks about all the different branches he has. And the summary is our repo is too big for GitHub. But at the end of that talk, he says, so what's the solution? We got to split our repo. That's not a short-term thing. So we've looked at it. We put up the mirror. It was a pain to get the mirror up. It's hard to maintain. It breaks all the time. We can't move our work there regularly, but it is something we're looking at for long-term. It's just we've got a big project. So let's move on. So next question, and I'm really curious as the answer, Thomas. Ol asks, with Richard's move to product management, does that mean that I'll be able to attend fewer meetups? Because they appreciated having me in Copenhagen, pat on the back, and they want me at more meetups. Now, I'm happy to say I don't mind sharing the meetups. They're a lot of fun, and I love attending them, but I know lots of others of the team want to attend them too, so I don't want to be too selfish. But
So, and that's a great point. I think, back to the 3-in-the-box model I mentioned earlier, I think a part of a product manager's job is to get out, the decisions don't happen inside the company, you get the insight from outside the walls of the company, right? So spending time at meetups, more time in front of customers, especially for the guys based in Maidenhead, having them attend these types of events is great as well. So you may not see Richard as much. You may see him more. You may see John more. May see Jens. You may see Gab. You may see me. Myself and Austin on the team attended a design and product related meetup out here in Palo Alto a couple of nights ago. So we try to do stuff inside of the product and design community as well. But I think a good product manager is out and he becomes the face, and they really are that channel for input. So it doesn't mean I'm going to keep Richard tethered down or inside the walls. That wouldn't help anybody.
Glad to hear that. So let's talk about iCow. Lots of questions about iCow. Most of the feedback I've gotten is very positive.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, iCow's one more change to our platform. And
right.
Jinja was complaining about that just a minute ago, as he's want to do that. We're always learning something new to work with Alfresco, and our interface keeps changing. How do we manage this transition where some of shares in old stuff, some of shares in new stuff? If we do a customization, it's going to have to be rewritten if it's on the old stuff. What advice do you have?
Yeah, so software is a living, breathing organism, right? I mean, it constantly evolves, it constantly moves forward. I think that's just the nature of the business, right? That's the environment. Specifically on iCow and Share and how it's a mixed set of technologies right now. Yeah, that's another thing we hear a lot. And I think it's because we wanted to move Share forward, and because iCow is a great tool to be able to do that, we were able to implement some of that stuff in the current release. We weren't able to get all the way there, but you have to. It's really a product management call to say, is it better to hold everything back and have a big bang, or do you make the relevant changes where you can, when you can, and then get that out early? We took the latter choice, to get things out there early, because things do evolve, right? But that said, things will continue to evolve because that's just the way that software goes forward, especially in UI technologies, as different requirements around mobile devices or risk devices or whatever the heck other devices may come out. There's going to be different UI layers that's going to be appropriate and continue to move forward. I think a way we can mitigate that is provide better transparency, a better heads up to the community and developer ecosystem, a better set of APIs to develop on, perhaps even a API test harness that you can develop to make sure that from a core platform and API standpoint, things aren't so dependent on that UI layer to kind of test what's going on, but maybe this developer harness would be a way to do that as well. So there's ways that we can mitigate and make it easier, but I do think it's a fact of life that things are going to move forward. And yeah, we're in a mid-cycle now, so expect more what we call iCowification, or more iCow inside of being used as we continue to embrace that, because we do want to get it more consistent, but that is a rolling ball that continues to move forward. So that's just the nature of the beast.
Sorry, I was on mute so you wouldn't hear me typing, though my keyboard's not as loud as P-Monks's. Right. There are lots of conversation on IRC around GitHub and things. People seem to really like the conversation, so thank you. When we were talking about this yesterday, was it John that pointed out, somebody pointed out, web technologies change every 3 years anyway. So if you're going to be a UI developer, things are going to change. Though, and we talked about that balancing act we have to do between our group of developers who want us to adopt newer stuff quicker and our group of developers who have stuff already built that we can't break. And it's hard to balance that. And Mike Farman pointed out specifically that we try to preserve backwards compatibility. You can still turn on the old header, the pre-iCow header in Share, in order to keep those extensions working. We do it where we can, but it's a hard problem. Did you have anything you want to add, John? I think John's on mute. There it is.
No, I think you said it. I think you said it all, Richard. I think, as Thomas said, it's a living, breathing thing. Software, and the UX is a faster changing area than most areas. They're the tools that we need to deploy to keep up with the market and our customers' needs and be able to iterate quickly. Mean that we have to change. So all we can do is make it as painless as possible. But it's not always easy.
Absolutely, and Peter had a drop, but I need to do the plug for him. He forgot to plug that we have a formal partner program where we solicit this feedback, and I know a lot of you are formal partners as well as developers or integrators, and you can give us more feedback through that formal system. That's the system that we have, for our formal partners, we have people assigned and paid to review that feedback and get it into the product. Otherwise, we have to get that feedback through the forums or conversations like this, and it's a harder process. But we appreciate the feedback, and the more specific the feedback, the better. So if you have a specific page that you need changed or you can't have changed for whatever reason, let us know. So,
Richard, one more point on the UI changes, hit it on it also, is that's, as I mentioned earlier in the first 5 minutes of the Hangouts, that's one of the reasons. That's another driving reason why we want to do a better job separating the core platform from the apps in the in the UI technologies, is so we can have that faster movement, right? Because these things change at different life cycles. So operationally, we're doing things differently as well.
So on that topic was also the request that as we upgrade the repo, it's been a very solid set of APIs for a very long time now, but Share keeps changing. How can we better document which versions of the repo you can use, which older versions of Share a newer version of the repo can support, so that a highly customized Share can continue to be used even though the repo keeps getting upgraded?
Yeah, I think it's a fair request. I mean, that just gets back to transparency and making people's lives easier. So, there's different ways to move forward and operationalize on that, but it's certainly a valid request. And Gav hears that more than once. So, yeah.
Yeah, maybe I can add something there. I think currently there is a obviously we're talking about community and enterprise. From an enterprise standpoint, there is clearly a support QA issue here. Up until now, we have tested, monolithically Alfresco and Share as a single release process. Moving forward, as Thomas was suggesting, we're looking into separating those life cycles, and this will require us to define a compatibility matrix, whether that's a version compatibility matrix or an API compatibility matrix, but certainly there has to be internally and externally clarity there. So I'm sure that you can expect much more of this flexibility as we separate the life cycle of apps and platform.
Excellent. I was leaving a pause to see if anybody else want to jump in. So, anything else we should cover on Share and iCal, John?
I think we've covered it all for now. I'm sure the community will have some comments as they get to start using it.
Excellent. Just going through the list of questions really quick. I did want to make sure to give Jens a chance to discuss Workdesk a bit. Bindu, who is our big Workdesk advocate, isn't on IRC this morning, but I'm sure when he watches the recording, he's going to wonder what the plans are for Workdesk.next.
Yeah, so we found that having Workdesk as a separate animal puts a lot of constraints on us and adoption problems. So we decided best way to move forward is to integrate it into the platform as quickly as possible. So what we are looking forward to is that we integrate basic capabilities for case management as quickly as possible. So this we are envisaging, and we are, by the way, doing it in purely iCal. Envisaging capabilities to build UI based on a role, manage content outside of sites, being able to manage cases that we are providing the capabilities of case files and virtual folders that enables us to represent the content using different taxonomies. And we are, Thomas said it earlier, dedicated to iterate faster than we did in the past, and probably will deliver our first initial release somewhere during mid of next year, and iterating on it and building a full-fledged application framework from that point, but that's further into the future.
Excellent. Thanks for giving that feedback, and I'm very interested. I think I found Workdesk really useful for very specific class of problems. I was talking with somebody about contract management the other day and thought Workdesk could be perfect, but we need that stuff in a share.
I mean,
so,
yeah, that's the feedback we got. The use case is there, and it's an important use case. And case management broadens the scope, the solution scope of the platform significantly. It's just constraining having Workdesk as a separate animal.
yeah. And when do you expect that the community will be able to see the fruits of that effort? Is that a 5.1 timeline, or is that a 6.0 timeline, or somewhere in between?
In between, but more closer to 5.1.
Good.
And we're using arbitrary numbers here right now, right? We don't know if it's 5.1 or 5x or whatever, but yeah, I think it's sooner. We'd like to get some of the concepts in there and then iterate on it.
So we already have a prototype, and we'll produce some demos, during the next week, and you'll probably be able to have a look at what we are building and thinking of.
Ooh, you said demos within the next week. You're going to get people all over you again, so you gotta. Yeah. We'll have to bring you on to Tech Talk Live to present that or something.
Yeah, welcome.
But in the spirit of iteration and getting feedback, I mean, that's what this is for. So if you have opinions, we want to hear them.
Excellent.
Yeah, I can't say we can move on each one of them, but hey, our ears are open.
So if you need help getting a hold of Jens, let me know. I'll put you in touch. So lots of conversation on iCal. One of the questions, this is probably going to have a similar answer to the GitHub question, which is we don't know exactly when, but John, what's the relative priority for upgrading Share to iCal versus doing new development? Would we expect to see Share upgraded to iCal in 5.1, or is that a post 5.1 closer to 6.0?
Yeah, it's going to be too much of a task to upgrade the whole of Share. We've got a lot of things we want to work on, and as we bring new functionality in, as we work on a particular area, we'll iCalify it if you like. But it's not something that we're going to fit en masse. It's going to be a gradual process.
Yeah, one of the requests on IRC is what if we took pre-iCal Share and kept that as one group in the repo, and post-iCal Share and kept that as another group, so people could work on a stable and a development branch. That sounds like a lot of support in QA, but what do you think? How would that be managed?
I think I know a couple of people in QA who would, probably strangle me if I suggested that. But it's an idea. But I as you say, it's a big extra support burden. So I guess, like most things, we'll consider anything, but we won't necessarily deliver it.
That's the balancing act. Because that would solve the backwards compatibility issue, but it would create a lot of overhead for take resources away from new development. It's a hard. I'm glad, John, it's your job to weigh that to weigh that decision. So I was just reviewing if we've made it. I think we made it through most of the questions. One of the questions was, how can partners and developers better understand what the engineering team is doing, which specific parts of Share are going to be worked on next. We talked a bit about how the tools we used, most of that information is in Jira, as the author of the question pointed out, but it's hard to find. Any suggestions on how we can make it easier for the community to understand which team's doing what?
I think you'll see some changes to Jira, which I assume will be opening up in terms of the way the different aspects, the different areas of the product we're working on are organized, which should clarify quite a lot of that. Should make it easier to see what's going on. So there'll be some changes that should help with that. And Gab's been driving that recently.
Would you mind going into a bit more details, Gab? How's it going to be reorganized?
Absolutely. So I mean, we really need to sort of complete the process. It's really in the process right now. We're working to change some of the projects, and I can go into detail there. And I think the sort of main idea there is to define clearly ownership of the different projects and deliverables that we have in Alfresco, and especially to also map the strategic separation that we're looking to do between the platform and the different applications. So what you're going to see is likely that ACE, the current Alfresco project, is going to consolidate to basically host platform issues, and there will be different Jira projects for the different applications that we deliver around the platform. How does that relate in terms of the funnel from the community is something that I really would like to discuss with Richard more in detail over the next couple of weeks, because I think we can do a better job at funneling internal requirements together with community requirements according to this new structure. So we didn't get there yet.
And thanks for the explanation. And that's a good plug for January's office hours. We're going to have Brian Remington and some of the engineering team joining us. I've been so focused on this office hours that I haven't worked much with Brian to prep for that. But that's one of the big questions: is how can we better work with our community contributors? So save those questions. We'll discuss it more in January.
And we can come back again in February, March, or whenever you need us, Richard. So, now, especially now that you'll be part of my team, we can run the whole schedule.
Take you up on that, absolutely. So it looks like we're running out of time. I was just looking really quick to see if we missed any last-minute questions. Boris, who's a hilarious individual. If you get the chance to shake his hand, please do. He points out that the name iCow sounds like an Apple product, with a cow with an Apple logo, which I guess it does.
They know it's Eddie iCow, right? Because of the Eddie would go, right? So
it's spelled like it's Hawaiian, so it's not spelled with the letter I. But if you write it out the way it sounds, okay. So on that joke that didn't go so well, I don't see any other questions. So I just want to close by thanking everybody. Appreciate your openness. I appreciate the community we try to be open. It can be hard to communicate effectively. We appreciate your patience with us, and I appreciate the product management team to come on here and share what you're thinking about things. We got a lot of good questions. I learned a lot about what we're thinking, and it's a really good exercise for us as a team to discuss these questions. So we appreciate you sharing your insights, the community, and giving us an opportunity to figure out what we think about a lot of these questions. Any last comments from the panel?
No, I think we should do this more often, especially as 5.0 is kind of a big bang. We think about post 5.0, we do some reorganization, we get some more people on the team, we're able to address some of these issues. I think it's a really exciting time internally to really go big on a lot of these on Alfresco and the ecosystem. So yeah, there's a lot of movement. I can speak from the executive team level on just scaling and growing the company. So this is actually a good thing, which helps all of us. And you can see tangibly, having Richard Gabb on the team, other members that we're hiring and bringing on, this is a whole new area of inflection. So this is exciting.
Excellent. So thank you again. If we missed any questions, it was a big group of questions, and we try to group them together and things. So if I did a poor job relaying your question, or if you have follow-up questions, let me know. We'll put it on. We can either answer directly or we'll put it on the list for next time. We should try to do this on a regular basis. So with that, thank you very much. Look forward to seeing each of you on office hours in the future. And next event, Tech Talk Live, first Wednesday in December. We're going to talk about using Alfresco as a repository for engineering models with as NASA JPL uses them. So thank you. We'll see you then.